And here goes the president that did not want to be president. Well, number one. This is going to be one of the people who initially didn't want the job. The way, and this is a difference between how presidential campaigns are run today is than then. We didn't have any primaries. So there's not this extended campaign season where candidates are vying for their party's nomination. What you had is one convention at a specific date in a specific city in which the group members of the party from different states got together, and they basically started making speeches and trying to figure out who was going to be their candidate. Now what this led to is a lot of speeches that were very opposed to certain candidates, and it also led to certain people being on the first ballot, not getting enough votes to become the nominee, and then other people who weren't even on that first ballot becoming a nominee on the second ballot, and third ballot getting more support, and then by the 8th time they voted, finally becoming president. That's kind of what's going on here. It looked like Martin Van Buren was going to become the Democrat nominee for president. He had the name recognition as being a former president, but he had a lot of baggage as well. So people weren't really convinced that he would be the Democratic champion. So when the Democratic National Party made it that you had to have 2/3 support to become their nominee, that kind of kicked Van Buren out. So then it was Calhoun. There's a guy from the north called Cass. And they all had some support, but not enough. And then James K. Polk's name gets put in there, and then he gets support, and then he wins. And he's told, hey, you're the Democrat nominee for the presidency of the United States. And he's kind of shocked. He thought he was going to be the vice presidential nominee. Now he's the presidential nominee. He knows a couple other things about the election of 1844. One, the Democratic Party was very divided. North, south, east, west. They are splintering up. That was a huge contest at their national convention. He comes out on top, but he never intended to be the president. And this is kind of in sitting with the politics at the time. The presidency should never be sought, but should never be declined either. So even though he was angling for the vice presidency, he's going to accept their nomination as the presidential candidate, but he also knows that he doesn't have the support of most Democrats either. So he's going to pledge to only serve one term if he's elected to kind of help the Democrats heal behind him, and then maybe that'll keep the party together going forward. But if you want to take a look at a president more known for Manifest Destiny, you're not going to find one other than Polk. And this is where Manifest Destiny is fulfilled during his presidential administration. So let's take a look at what happens in his administration. That westward expansion's peak. We annexed Texas, war with Mexico, possibly going to war with Britain over Oregon as well. And all of this is going to touch off sectional rivalries about the extension of slavery to these new territories. All right, so the election 1844, he is going to defeat Henry Clay. Lord bless him. He tried to become president. He never will. But he's going to defeat him 170 to 105. But it's going to be really close in the popular vote. So this is one of those nail-biter campaigns. He's seen as young Hickory. So you have old Hickory, which is Andrew Jackson. So he's very similar to Jackson's story. He's born in the same area of North Carolina, South Carolina. He is going to move to Tennessee. So he's moving Trans-Appalachia region. He's kind of that rough and tumble guy. So a lot of people see him as Jackson's heir apparent, where Van Buren was kind of forced into that role but didn't really fit it really well. Polk is a natural heir to Jackson's legacy. All right, so his domestic policies. He's not really known for a lot of his domestic policies, but he is going to veto the River and Harbors Bill when he's president because he believes it's going to favor northern cities over the South, and that he doesn't think that that's the role of the federal government to be kind of picking sides and helping out sides. He's also going to create an independent treasury system to hold the nation's money. That's not a state bank and it's not a private bank. So it's independent and separate. This system is going to last until the Federal Reserve comes about in 1913. So it had some longevity to it. And he's also going to be the president with the Walker Tariff, which is going to be a reduced tariff, a famous reduced tariff. In his foreign policy, remember, he's got the Mexican-American War kind of on his shoulders as far as president. 1846 rolls around. At Nueces River, Rio Grande River, he sends a cavalry brigade. They're attacked. Whether he meant to send them and spark the war or not, he is going to try to pay for California and New Mexico before we go to war. He offers between $20 and $40 million, and Mexico refuses. So then we have a quick war with Mexico about that Thornton affair, and that's going to allow us to seize New Mexico and California, and we're going to pay $15 million for it through the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Mexico is going to give up all the claims to Texas above the Rio Grande River. So we've got all those issues with Mexico settled now, and they should be settled because we just took half of their country. Right? With the Oregon Territory, he's having to decide whether we're going to fight Britain or fight Mexico or fight both. So to avoid having to fight two wars at one time, instead of trying to fight for all of the Oregon Territory from Great Britain, we are going to compromise at the 49th parallel, just extend that convention at 1818 line across to the Pacific. And one of the other things we're trying to do is we know that New Mexico and Utah is not going to be that great territory for slavery, and there's a concern that the southern states need something, or else they're probably going to leave the Union. So he's going to try to purchase Cuba for $100 million. Think about that. We bought the entirety of Louisiana Purchase for $15 million. We bought all the Mexican Cession for $15 million. And now we're offering $100 million for Cuba. Spain is going to say no thank you. Right? The reason for that is that unlike Louisiana Purchase, which was basically barren wasteland when it sold, Mexican Cession, barren wasteland when it sold, Cuba is making a lot of money for the Spanish Empire. It's going to take more than $100 million to pry Cuba away from Spain. So this was an attempt to get Cuba, but it didn't go through. Alright, so we're on to Zachary Taylor.